Hi, Misha Gill, Speedwell Law. In this video, I'm going to give you 5 tips for creating your distribution wishes. And so those tips are how distribution works, what is a per stirpes distribution, choose percentages over dollar figures, and handling of tangible personal property, and consider establishing a living trust to plan for Black Swan events. All right, tip number 1, how distribution works. The thing you need to know is that it is specific bequests first and then general or residual bequests after that. And so a specific bequest is, I give my Ferrari to my son Alan, I give $10,000 cash to the ASPCA. It's a specific asset or amount to a specific person. That's a specific bequest. Everything that's not specifically distributed in your estate plan, it gets wrapped up into what's called the residual distribution. And so a residual distribution is everything that's left over. And the typical way that we see people leave their residual distribution is spouse first and then in equal shares to my children. That's the most common thing. And you can do it in a bunch of different ways. There's immense flexibility with residual distributions. Typically we'll see some constraining clauses, just making sure that your distribution goes to beneficiaries when they reach a certain age. And you can do it where it is 1/3 at 25, 1/3 at 30, 1/3 at 35. Just keep in mind that if you're going to do something like that, that trust or that will or that estate is going to have to continue for all those years until those beneficiaries reach those specified ages. And during that time, the estate is incurring fees. And so, typically we recommend that you just allow your beneficiary to withdraw as much of the principal as they desire in writing at 25. 25 is just a good age. You know who you are. In general, you're going to know who you are. You know who you're going to be, professional, a laborer, anything. So that's tip number 1, how distribution works, specific and then residual. Tip number 2 is what is a per stirpes distribution? So a per stirpes distribution is where you are giving a share or an asset to a named beneficiary, and if that named beneficiary predeceases you, to their children, in equal shares, as many children as there are. So we're envisioning the scenario where you've given your Ferrari or your bank account to your nephew, but they pass away in a tragic car accident, but they left some kids behind. You would want them to inherit that beneficiary's share. And so you do that by saying per stirpes at the end of the sentence. The alternative is per capita. A per capita distribution is when you give a gift to a person, and then if that person predeceases you, the gift fails and gets added to the residuary. And so that's per capita, to the person. Tip number 3, choose percentages over dollar figures. There is a possibility, if you're going to leave a dollar figure to a person, that it may defeat your wishes. Right, so the circumstance that I've seen happen is where a daughter was living in mom's home when she passed away, and it was meaningful for daughter to have housing because she was a single mom and not working a particularly lucrative job. And so having secure housing for her and her daughter was very important. But what happened is that her mom made a very large specific bequest to another relative, a brother. And there wasn't enough cash in the estate to make that distribution. And so that required the house to be sold. Now, if mom had a say in it, if mom was still there, she might have had a different wish. But she neglected to change her wishes according to the circumstances. And so if you're going to choose an absolute dollar figure, you just have to be very careful that you're not going to bankrupt the estate by making that large bequest. $1,000 or so, I'm not going to fight you on that, but if we're talking $5,000, $10,000, I might encourage you to say, all right, maybe you should leave this as a percentage, and we can choose that percentage based on today's value of your estate, but you don't know what's going to happen later in life. the end-of-life care that we incur in America is very expensive. And so we don't know exactly how much is going to be in the estate when you pass away. You know, you're going to get the health care you need, but if you're going to leave anything behind, you just wouldn't want it to have an adverse consequence on your beneficiary that you wouldn't have otherwise desired. And so percentages are much more flexible versus absolute dollar figures. So tip number 4, how do we handle tangible personal property? Tangible personal property is your stuff, your things, your clothes, your furniture, your artwork, your belongings. And when you come to see me, I don't expect you to have figured out how you want to distribute all of those things. You know, you've probably got a lot of stuff. The way my family did it, when my grandmother was moving out of her home, she had a lot of antiques, and the 3 children went around the house putting different colored tape on different pieces of stuff. And so there was a negotiation that happened, and everyone made that clear what was going to happen. You don't have to do it that way. What every one of my estate plans has in it is a clause that says, I give my tangible personal property in accordance with any written instructions that I leave behind. And I also provide that form for you to leave those written instructions. And so the form that I'm going to give you is just going to be straightforward 1-page list format. Who gets what item? You don't have to use my form. You can use a narrative written letter if you want. Just make sure you sign and date it. You know, you can say, because of the support that Alice gave me while I was going through my divorce, I give her my Matisse painting, that kind of thing. That's what I mean when I say you can write a narrative letter. But if you don't leave any written instructions, then typically what's going to happen is it's either all going to go to one person or to the residual distribution of the trust or will. So that's how we handle tangible personal property. Tip number 5. Consider establishing a living trust to plan for black swan events. So what I mean by black swan events are events that you can reasonably anticipate might occur, but you don't know if they will occur. All right, so kind of like a black swan. You know, maybe 1 in 100 eggs is going to hatch a black swan. You just don't know which egg and when that egg is going to come. So that's what I mean by a black swan event. So black swan events that we think about when we do estate planning are if that beneficiary were to be unsuitable to receive a distribution for any of a number of reasons. That reason might be because that beneficiary is addicted to drugs or alcohol. Kind of speaks for itself, right? You wouldn't want to give a lot of money to a person who's addicted because they would just use it to harm themselves. Other black swan events are if that beneficiary has creditors. So instead of that money going to that beneficiary, the creditors would garnish that money. You would want the trustee or executor to have the ability to hold that money back until those creditors go away. That's one of the nice features of a trust. Another black swan event is divorce, marital dissolution. You don't want the divorcing spouse of your blood to then have a 1/2 or 1/3 interest in any money that they inherit from you. And so those are black swan events that we plan for with a living trust. And so it would be a good idea, if you have any of those circumstances in your life, to consider establishing a living trust for your beneficiaries. So that's 5 tips for creating your distribution wishes. Thanks for watching.